Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to 1% Better, where we take a look at hidden stories in sport. I'm Xylon, and I'm joined as always by Dr. David Lipman. And if you're new to the show, we open up with a medical question to test his validity as a doctor. Which of these has no pain receptors, eyes or the brain?
Brain.
Was that easy? Apparently, this is why people can do surgery on people's brains while they're awake.
I feel like you might have had this question before, mate, but that is correct. You are 100%
That was the real
correct.
test. That was the real test, actually, to see if you remembered that we had this question.
It's
an altered version.
I set you up for a different question this week that you didn't take. You didn't bite on, but that's okay.
What was that? I can't remember.
I sent you a thing on social media, and I said, "Ask me about this because I got a fun fact for you." It was an athlete who tested positive. He had a drug test and came back as pregnant, and it was like it's happened before. This has happened before, and everyone always goes, "Oh, it's because he got someone to pee for him, right?" And she happened to be pregnant, which is true. But there is a way that you could look pregnant as a male peeing on a pregnancy test, and it's actually terrible because it's generally testicular cancer. But these things can happen, yeah.
So was this guy diagnosed with testicular cancer?
No, I'm pretty sure he had somebody else pee for him. He was cheating on a drug test, but it's a fun fact.
I'm being exposed here, so listeners will know that David produces these episodes. He comes up with most of the content. The only part I'm responsible for is the doctor's question, and now he's taking that over as well. I'll be gently fired.
So good.
We are supported by Precision Fuel and Hydration on this podcast. Thank you so much to them for supporting us. I saw photos of you running with the CEO, Andy Blow, today on an amazing track in Chamonix where you are. And you were trying to drop him on this track. Man, what are you doing? You're trying to lose us our sponsorship.
Incorrect. I was doing the exact opposite. He texted me and was like, "Hey, man, I'm coming to town. Do you want to join in?" And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, "Oh, I'm doing a bunch of marathon pace intervals and all this. And I'm like doing 22K. And I was like, I don't think I'm ready for this. I've run more it's between this morning, that run, and the last 2 days. I've done more in 3 days than I've done in any week for the last 6 months. But anyway, I was like, he calls you got to go. So I was like, yeah, sure. I'll come down and do some stuff with you. It was him and his brother, Dave, and they were going to do some marathon pace intervals. So, did a bit of a jog, warm up, all good. Doing these marathon pace intervals. And it was such a I hung with his brother for the first 3K. And then his brother's like, "I'm done. I'm cooked. I'm going to do some of my own stuff." And I was like, I guess I got to pace Andy now. And I was like hopping in and out. He did a bunch of 3K reps and then some 2K reps and some ones. And I was sort of doing, it's a 300 meter track for some reason. So I was doing kind of a lap or two, usually two, and then having like one or two off and then jumping back in, trying to help him out for that. And so I wasn't trying to drop him. I was trying to just be in front of him to actually try and help him with the reps, mate. And then we would jog down to the Sun God. We jogged down to Moody, had a coffee with Sun God, and then that social run started with Sun God. And we were running up towards my accommodation, and I was like, "This is going perfectly." And I'm running along and I'm going, "This is going perfectly. This is going perfectly." And we get there, and they branch off to the right. And I'm like, "See you later, guys!" And just turned to the left and ran home. ended up running like 23 Ks nonetheless with a bunch of intensity in there. I was like, "Oh!" And so I think day off tomorrow. But it was good. And Andy, being the kind gent he is, opened his boot of the car that they parked there. It was like, "Oh, you want anything?" And there was just gels and...
You just preempted my question. I was going to be like, question, was there nutrition? Was there precision?
There was so much precision. They had everything, and they were wearing their precision tops and like their sleeves, their arm sleeves. And this one guy at the track goes, "Team Precision." And I was like, "Oh, what gave it away, mate?" These like obnoxiously bright colored shirts and sleeves and caps. But no, if you do want to try some of their product, we do have a discount code for that. So please check our show notes there. It is OPB2025. And you can also go down and there's a fuel and hydration planner we got a link to there, as well as to book a call with somebody to help you with your nutrition. Their sports science team, who I'm catching up with tomorrow in town, are available on those calls. So please do help yourself with that, help us with that, and help Precision with that, frankly. So it's a win-win-win. Thank you to all those who do that.
What are you doing there? So you are in Chamonix. You're recording this from Chamonix for the UTMB festival.
Yeah, I'm here connecting with some people. All those things. Wanted to come out, see some people, and do some stuff. So, did that. And I got a media accreditation from our podcast. So we will. I'll see if I can get some time with some of the elites to interview them. And if so, then maybe we put that out soon. But I may not be able to get that, but otherwise just in town doing my thing, man. I got to see, we're going to talk about this in a little while, but I got to see the top that Caleb Olsen wore at, or a version that will be in production for Nike, the sort of holy top. So I'll throw a photo of that. I'll send you a photo of that we can put on social at the Nike ACG thing. And seen a few other things. There's a big, I saw the Vibram, Hoka are dropping money here, proper money. 2 hotels that they've got all these chalets for their staff and stuff. These 2 hotel activations. They've got a big store they've bought on the corner of the course in town. They've got stuff happening in a huge space at the expo. They're obviously the naming rights sponsor. They've got a big thing like display there. And then Vibram have also got a big display there. And Vibram are reselling people's shoes. So they're in there grinding off the bottoms of the shoes to put a new outsole on them, which reminds me of like when I was a podiatrist actually. And I was like, oh, maybe I could get in there and do some of that. That'd be a bit of fun, but decided against it.
Oh man, I've been following your progress, following your photos, it just looks like a super cool vibe there. I know you had one experience that you really loved, seeing how influencers operated at these events. And I know how much you love influencers and content creators and skipping queues and going to the front of the queue and do you know who I am? But
there was a little bit of that, and on some level they're a necessary thing to have here, and so like it's all good. I just didn't like the way this one behaved, but that's okay. I don't have to like the way they behave, and they don't have to like the way I behave. But mate, enough about me. What about you? How you been going? How's all your stuff going? You had a walking meeting the other day, I heard, instead of a sitting meeting, which is progress. What else?
Still, I don't know if I'd say progress, still a lot of nerve pain, just in the same place as last week, as weeks before, but still just trying to do the right thing all the time. Had my bio canceled on me today, but I still went to the gym and got 40 minutes in. So just trying to do the same thing all the time in terms of being consistent, like with nutrition, with strength training, with moving around. The one thing I'm struggling with is the nerve gets very sore and compressed when I'm sitting or standing. And unfortunately, that's what I have to do for my job. So there's no other way around that. But I am trying to be better at like taking breaks more often. And like you mentioned, I had this idea of I had to go meet someone for a meeting, and I asked them, hey, can we do it as a walking coffee meeting instead of a sitting meeting? So trying to find ways around this. The one thing I haven't solved yet is the working at the desk all day. Maybe looking at a walking treadmill. I don't know, but I have to solve that problem.
In my experience, talking to people across a number of like health, wellness, also like pain, musculoskeletal pain things, which is kind of where you're at. It's not about a walking treadmill versus sitting or a standing desk versus sitting. It's like the variety is the key. So you kind of want to keep your options open. So you want to have a walking pad that you can move. You want to have a sit to stand desk, which I know you do, rather than I have a standing desk only, because that tends to end up causing problems if it's a quick transition from a bunch of sitting time to a bunch of standing time.
I'm also trying to figure out, can I go for like a 5K or 10K walk? And what kind of work can I do on that walk? Like, can I dictate some things to ChatGPT and audibly dictate back to me so that when I get back to work, I've already done a lot of the research that I need for certain tasks? I'm trying to figure that out. So it's just problem solving and trying to work around this nerve issue as I still try to avoid a fusion, because that is absolutely not what I want.
We can certainly do, I'm saying this live, we can certainly do some of our calls virtually, mate, if you want. We can just take it for a walk. It's something I used to do when we used to work the company together. I was doing a lot of calls at the time, and I used to ask if we could do, with certain people, I would do them and we'd walk. It was actually one of the other guys we worked with. We would have a standing call and we would do it walking.
I was going to suggest that. I actually was going to suggest that last Monday, but I think the weather ended up being bad or something. But I was going to suggest that. Wow. We are supported by Stride running power meters on this podcast. What do they have going on in their community at the moment?
Well, they've just had, so we're going to talk about this in a second, the 100-kilometer attempt. So people try to run under 6 hours in the 100-kilometer attempt. And one of their athletes, Charlie Lawrence, was there. And he's actually a partner of previous guest of this podcast, Alison Lynch. And Charlie was there. He was trying to break 6 hours. He didn't, I'll spoil it here. He didn't break 6 hours. He did run faster than any Americans ever run before. He ran 6:03:47 for 100 kilometers, which is wild. He's also the 50-mile world record holder. So Charlie's an avid user of Stride. He had a big injury and came back from it. They documented all of it on Stride's with some YouTube stuff as well. So it's worthwhile going to check that out. It's quite a cool YouTube series there, I think it was.
If you'd like to check out Stride, we do have a link down in the show notes below. We have a unique link to our podcast, so that helps us out. So check them out. David uses it a lot and recommends it highly. Running with power is just so much more accurate and so helpful. Coming up on this episode, man, we're going to have one of the most important interviews we've probably had on this podcast to date. For the last couple of weeks, we have been throwing forward to it, but we're going to have professional cyclist Clara Koppenburg on here. She's just completed the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift, but she's on here to talk about the struggle she's had the last 4 or 5 years in the sport, overcoming an eating disorder, winning during that eating disorder, so being very tempted to keep going, but actually not being healthy as a human, and her family really trying to get her off that bandwagon. And she talks about what the turning point was. It is an incredible conversation, so stick around for that. But we've got some community shout outs to get through. Thanks to all our new subscribers the last few weeks. I don't know what's been going on, but we've had a massive bump in subscribers, so thank you to every single new person listening. We really, really appreciate that. But we're also greedy and not content, so if you haven't subscribed yet, please contemplate doing that now, and also sharing the podcast with someone you think might find value. We also had a comment on Spotify, David.
Yeah, from Alistair Courtney. So he confirmed, we gave him a shout out a couple of weeks ago for finishing a 100 miler. And I said to you at the time, like, I swear we've just given this guy a shout out recently for a 100 miler. And he confirmed that was indeed him that had done it. So my memory isn't failing me just yet. He's saying he's still learning the distance. And he also says, keep up the great pod. So thank you, Alistair. I appreciate that. We appreciate that.
Just to prove that the social companies do listen to all our conversations, I've had a Facebook recommendation telling me I should be friends with Alistair Courtney for weeks now. And I was like, who is Alistair Courtney? We have no friends in common on Facebook. I do not know Alistair Courtney. And now I know why, because Facebook listens to this pod while we're recording.
Well, if they could rate the podcast, that'd be great. So like, dear Meta, you can go rate the podcast. That'd be great.
Exactly.
5 stars.
And also a big congratulations to Scott Crawshaw, who won the Fort de Soto International Triathlon in very rough weather, it sounded like.
Yeah, I saw this on the Strava group. And so, it sounded like a rough day, but he obviously won it. So you take whenever you take the chocolates, you're happy. Also to Andres Vegan, another great performance. He seems to just go from strength to strength, this guy. So he won the Zarasu Puss Marathonis half marathon in 75 minutes. So another quick time as well.
And then Brett Goldfinch, third at the Barossa Marathon. He won $400, a bottle of wine, and most importantly, a PB of 3 minutes. He ran a 2:46 there.
Yeah, and then our CMO, Spencer Lauderback, had a big week on the memes again. So thanks to Spencer for that. But also he ran Hood to Coast with his wife, Heather. So it's really cool to see that. We actually have a question from him. He sent us this to, we have a DM group with him. It's interesting because he's smart enough to know that he's just got the podcast and me. He doesn't have Xylon in that because he knows Xylon runs the socials. Anyway, he sent me a thing, or he sent us a thing from Running Shoe Bible, and it was the Adidas Treadflow, which is a treadmill shoe that they've designed.
Talk to me about this thing. And if listeners if you haven't seen this, pause it, Google it, go look at it so you know what the hell we're talking about here. Wow. Talk to me about this thing.
Adidas Treadflow, spelled exactly how you would think, and it's one word. And he said, I feel like we don't get enough of your opinions on shoes on the podcast, given how much we know you're interested in them, not to mention your professional background. So for those who don't know, I was a podiatrist for a while. I sort of alluded to this earlier today, which, as I explained to Spencer at the time, is actually not a medical qualification in Australia. It is an allied health qualification you do as an undergrad, but I digress. So looking at it, the Treadflow, it's got Climacool. This is an old technology from them. They've had this for probably 20 years plus, which is about breathability. And they used to make these shoes that had holes in the outsole so you could get ventilation in. The problem is, as soon as we have ventilation, we can also get water. So it's not always a great way to do it. But, these are made for the treadmill. So this does make sense given, treadmills get warm from the heat of the treadmill belt as well. And you don't run it through any water unless you sweat enough. But it's also got a dual layer of Light Strike Pro cushioning. So basically this is like super foam made for a treadmill. The outsole is, as you can see, it doesn't have a lot of traction because you don't need it. it's got high friction. So when we have if you think about shoes that are made for court, like basketball, handball, these sort of things, they generally don't have big lugs. There's not like big differences in the size in the sole from lowest to highest point, which means it's made for more friction rather than traction. And if you think about like a football cleat or a rugby boot, that's made for traction. You've got these big sort of spikes, right? So that's one way to think about it. So this is obviously not got those. So it's a cool idea. It's certainly obviously they're not worried about traction and they are worried about heat. So this is a smart design. One thing I'd say though on this is that treadmills are not homogeneous and neither are people. So not everyone's going to want the same thing on a treadmill, and not all treadmills are the same. So if you think about a Woodway treadmill, for instance, they feel a lot like the road, whereas a lot of other treadmills have got a lot of sort of cushioning to them. So they run a lot softer. And so when we think about ideal shoe for surface, it's a product of the individual. So that's the runner, which is going to be different, the shoe, and that's midsole as well as outsole, and then the surface, right? So the same shoe that could be your favorite road running shoe is probably not going to be your favorite grass running shoe or your favorite dirt running shoe or your favorite treadmill running shoe. So I think it's a cool way to go about this, but I think people are a bit too different, and I think treadmills are a bit too different. But it's certainly got us talking about it on our podcast. So I think, let's see. There's also, speed is a big deal here as well. So this is a shoe that I think people are going to feel pretty good running quickly in, maybe not quite as good running slowly in. But it's a good question, and it's a cool shoe. I'm like stoked Adidas is playing with this.
I don't know. To me, it seems like brands are trying to find more ways to sell us things. I would love to actually test this out and feel the difference and find value in it. Then I'll be like, okay, cool. But yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, like they're a company, they make products. They should be trying to make more products that will hopefully help people. So, but that's the caveat. It has to help us. Let's have a look at what's come across my desk and look at what's been happening across the world in the last couple of weeks or so. We previously discussed the 16-year-old phenomenal athlete, Cooper Lutkenhaus, and his amazing run at the US Olympic trials. As I said, he's 16 and he was doing that against adults there, and he just, blew the field away. Didn't win, but was incredibly impressive. And
fourth fastest American of all time.
Yeah, 16 years old. Crazy. But he's just signed a pro deal with Nike.
Yeah, which is huge, right? So this makes a ton of sense for Nike. He's international level already. We talked about it. If he never runs faster than that doesn't mean he's had a bad career. He can have a great career. He could win Olympic medals and never run faster than that, and that would be a great career. So it's super interesting. He decided to go pro, and I think some of this is to do with the fact that he lives in Texas. So in Texas, high school athletes can't sign NIL deals, whereas in other states they can. So I think that's a big driver in this. But by signing this deal, he forgoes his eligibility in high school, so he can't run for his high school anymore, and he forgoes his college eligibility. Which is weird.
He's probably been like very quick and has no competition at high school level, judging on what he did at the Olympic trials.
Yeah, I'd suggest so. Yeah, I would suggest so. Although you'd be surprised how good some high school runners are in the US. It's a very deep system. But nonetheless, I think your point's well made. I do find it interesting that he signs an NIL, like a pro deal. It's a murky area between NIL and pro deals and stuff. So anyway, I wonder if this will eventually change, but here we are. He's the first athlete to ever sign an NIL deal in high school. There have been previous ones that to sign a pro deal in high school. There have been others that signed it just after they finished. So Drew Hunter, Josh Hoey, and Hobbs Kessler, but that was after they finished high school. But yeah, he could have signed an NIL deal if he was older, if he was 17, but only with a university. Right, so he can't sign an NIL deal in high school per se. Anyway, I'm not sure about this. It's not always a good thing. We talked about this a bit with Gout, and actually Cooper Lutkenhaus before more so. Is that these kids need to have time to be kids, and it's hard growing up, and it's hard being 16 and 17 and 18 years old. And if you're doing that in the limelight, trying to live like a pro, he's going to be hanging out with people who are in their 20s, who are in their 30s. Like those are going to be his peers. Like it's just very difficult. So I'm hoping, we've seen some of the bad side of this with Mary Kane as well. So I'm hoping people can just let him be a kid. Yes, he's pro, but also like let him be a kid a little bit. And it's interesting to hear me say this because I, for the longest time, call it till about 5 years ago, would have said he's a pro now, he has to behave like one. And, increasingly I'm sort of softening maybe in my old age. So, yeah.
I think so. It's got everything to do with age. By the way, if you're not familiar with it, NIL standing for name, image, and likeness. Speaking of teenage phenoms and people who are probably too fast for the people they run against, is Gout in Australia. You sent me a video of him competing, and I didn't see anyone else in this video running against him.
Well, you did on the start line. It's actually interesting. This is a track I used to run at. I know the track. He was competing against the school I went to. So it's cool. I mean, he broke, like, the whole headline was he broke the 10-second barrier. It's all smoke and mirrors and media hype here. He broke the 10-second barrier with handheld timing, which doesn't count. I think he ran a 9.94. That is not a sub 10-second on electric timing. Promise you it isn't, because there's a delay between the starter's gun and your finger, whereas it isn't when it's electronically timed. So it was a handheld time. He's going to break the Australian record sooner or later, probably at the World Championships. So he's a good chance. He seems like he's a big meat runner. So let's see how he goes. That will be a sub 10 as well. I don't know exactly what the record is, but I think he'll go sub 10 and then break the record shortly afterwards, for sure.
Is that the World Championships in Tokyo?
Yeah, actually, he may not be running the 100 there. I mean, he's only running the 200, I think you're right. So maybe he won't break that 100-meter record just yet, but I mean, he's close. He's run a sub 10.
Just quickly, what category would he be taking part in there? Against elites?
Yeah, against the men.
Okay, interesting.
It's just like Cooper Lutkenhaus, man. These guys, these are two kids who are 16, 17 years old running international quality times. So, I mean, he's already done a sub 10 in Europe, but it was illegal wind. So he's kind of gone under 10 twice. A couple are not quite. So, yeah, we'll get there. But, yeah, the race, if you see the footage, it's ridiculous. He's flying.
Let's move on. Adidas had an event where 6 runners or so tried to break 6 hours for 100K. What's the story here? This seemed to have come out of nowhere. I saw the preview for it briefly, and it looked impressive with Valtteri Bottas being in the video, but that was about it. And then I saw the result.
Yeah, it felt very short to me as well. I wonder if they were looking for a weather window or something, and it was like front end of the weather window and they just took it. I wonder if that was part of it. Because I thought this would have been hyped for ages. It's effectively a lot of what has been happening in running, which is we're going to build a shoe to try and help these runners break some barrier. It's going to be illegal. We don't care because it's, moving the human race forward or whatever. And it's a good exercise in sports science. So, I think they probably did a better job of getting a group of runners that could do this than anyone else has, in my opinion. Maybe the Breaking 2 guys originally. But, most of those guys didn't go close, whereas these guys all went very close, I guess, or relatively closer as a percentage. They started at midnight, and I have no idea why. I assume it's to do with temperature. That's my only assumption, given it's summer and it was in the south of Italy. So my guess is they probably had to do it for that reason. I would have argued that they should have got these people onto that time zone, because I reckon that's a big factor in here, that it's hard to get hype for that sort of thing, especially if there's no spectators or anything like that. So yes, the heat is a problem.
Do you know much about that? Would that affect your performance, like starting at midnight, running at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. when you're usually sleeping?
Definitely. No question. They would, if they could do it in the same climatic conditions, so no sun and cold, they would 100% run faster if this started at, let's call it 10 a.m.
Interesting.
No,
okay.
Absolutely no question from an arousal hormonal perspective. So there's an argument here, if you're someone like Charlie Lawrence who's coming from the States, that you're at more of an advantage because it's the wrong time zone for you. Right? So you're moving east. So as a result, it's more in his daytime that this happens. So there's certainly that argument. But you could also argue that they should all get on this time zone, right, and get used to it. And maybe there's they should have been training at this time as well. But I'm not their coach, so I don't have to worry about this stuff. But I saw some really interesting sports science around it. Lots of, obviously the shoe was a big deal, 60 millimeters, so very illegal, but cool shoe by the looks of it. Looked really interesting. Would not want to run in it. It's so high. Actually, I do want to run in it a lot, but it would be very high. Lots of cooling, pre-cooling, that sort of stuff, which was cool to see. It was an interesting track. It was in the south of Italy on some road that was called the High Speed Ring. So I assume this is like a speed testing course for cars, and they did 8 laps. So that makes it about a 12.5 kilometer loop, which is like 7 miles or something in a loop. So it's quite interesting that they found a spot like that. I think it's cool. Obviously needed it because these guys couldn't turn, not in those shoes, and certainly you don't want to turn because you waste energy when you're talking about trying to run 100 perfectly. You want to sort of run the same speed the whole time. We mentioned Charlie Lawrence already. He ran 6:03:47. Another runner that most people would be familiar with is Alexander Sorokin. He ran 6:04:09. So he's like been in and around this record for a while. And then the guy who actually did it, I sent this to you, Sibusiso Kubeka, who ran 5 hours 59:20. It's a South African guy. Never heard of him, but it's great.
My compatriot, never heard of him. Apparently, he ran something like 35 minutes and some change for every 10K of this 100K, which is just phenomenal. I saw that somewhere. I need to verify it, but I saw that somewhere, and that would, I mean, I can't even do that for one 10K. Like,
yeah, it's. I think it's around 3:30 something per kilometer. So yeah, you're right.
Crazy, man. Let's talk Diamond League. I've been watching lots of Diamond League lately and
You're
really
welcome.
actually enjoying it. Yeah.
You are welcome.
We got the finals coming up in Zurich this week. It's going to be out. It's going to happen before we release this podcast. But let's recap quickly. They were in Lausanne the last week, and in Brussels as well. Should we start with Switzerland?
Yeah, let's start in the order they happened. So this was a pretty rough meet, rough weather, real bad.
It was raining so bad, man.
You saw a couple of the East Africans on the start lines for distance events just shivering.
Yeah.
One thing to remember, and this is certainly going to come into our, as a throw forward to some UTMB discussion we have, when the weather's bad, look for the northern Europeans. Like there was a girl who ran the 400 meters. I've never heard of her, some Norwegian girl, and torched everybody and ran really well. I think she ran a PB. And I was like, yeah, she doesn't, this isn't right at home. Yeah. So always worthwhile considering that for sure. There wasn't a lot here that I sort of took note of that was great. But one thing I did note, Oblique Seville, who completely blows the Northern European thing out of the water in a pretty rough conditions in the 100 meters, this dude ran 9:87.
I was like, what? This Jamaican looks, and he's actually scary. When he looks focused and on it, I'm like, this guy's going to kill someone. Like, he was scary.
Yeah, so that was a good run from Oblique. He tends to run, and this happens with some athletes. The other one was Asafa Powell, in contrast to Usain Bolt, where they run better when there's no pressure on them and when there is pressure. And a sign of a great athlete is when the pressure's on, you run better. And Oblique is kind of underperformed a bit in his career, so I'm hoping he can buck that trend a little bit. But this was a meet where no one expected anything from him, and he smoked it. So let's see. But probably the two events that I thought were the most interesting were the 800s. So the women's 800s. Georgia Hunter-Bell was just tracking her training partner, Keely Hodgkinson. Keely had run 154 the week before. She ran 155 this week in rough conditions. So that was kind of cool. Sekadiso, the South African, she went for it, but wasn't quite there.
She burnt out.
Yeah. And Georgia Hunter-Bell apparently is going to focus on the 800 at the World Champs. And I think she should, it's probably to do with the competition. I think she's a better 1500 meter runner, but I think she will do better in the 800 because I think it's a weaker field compared to the women's 15, which is so stacked. So, we'll talk more about my predictions for World Champs upcoming. But the men's 800, Josh Hoey kept the dream alive. So he won this, which meant I think he gets to the finals. I need to double check that, which means he can then potentially qualify for the World Champs by being the Diamond League winner. Wanyonyi, just terrible tactically, got boxed in. And then Marco Arop, this poor bloke, keeps trying everything he can to change up his race tactics and just doesn't ever quite win anything. He's like forever the bridesmaid, this poor dude. He tried to do his kick and then got out kicked, and it was just, I feel a bit sorry for Marco Arop. I kind of want to, I didn't really like him much, and then I heard some interviews with him. I was like, oh, this guy's actually really lovely. I'd love him to win the World Champs, but I just don't think he will.
Should we move on to Brussels? What happened there?
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw this, but the men's 1500 had 18 guys in it. It was just too many guys. Niels Laros, the Dutch kid, won this. We've talked about him before on this podcast with his kick, which is so insane. He just killed it. Great kick. He ran, it was pretty quick too. So I've heard from St. Moritz that he's been in fire. I got a text from somebody who was up there. I was like, hey, keep an eye on Niels Laros, somebody that I know likes him. But he's 20th and he's 7th all time in the mile, because he won Prefontaine where we ran such a fast mile. So Yared Naguse really struggled in this. He is second in the standings, though, for the Diamond League, so he does make the final. So he's safe. But, he had a rough race in this one.
So he has to win that final to make the World Championships.
Yeah, and I don't think he'll do that. No. I really don't think he'll do that. So I think someone like Niels Laros may be there, or someone else maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, Laros, if he's there, he looked dominant. He looked so comfortable throughout that race and won it, let me say in inverted commas, easily.
Yeah, I mean, his kick is so potent that you've got to go out really hard, but he's also really fit. So it's like it's hard. Like this is the problem that you have. This is the Nagoose discussion we had like last week, which is if you don't have a kick, you're kind of screwed unless you move up a distance, because if you go hard, they can often hang with you, and if you don't and you let it be a tactical race, they can out kick you. So you kind of get stuck. So women's 1500 was a really strange race. Basically, there were some pacemakers that went out, and Lyndon Hall went with them, the Australian, and no one else went with her. It's just like she sat out the front with them. She's one of these people that doesn't have a great kick. She's probably better in the sort of, she's been running 1500s for a long time and she's good. She held the Australian record for a bit, but she's probably a better 3,000, 5,000 runner when you, again, thinking about the kick. And so she had to go with the pacemakers to, make it honest, and everyone else just sat back a bit. And then she ended up getting out-kicked anyway. So Nikki Hiltz out-kicked her. Nikki Hiltz won it in great shape going into Tokyo, and Lyndon ran a PB, so she'd be happy, and she looked very happy afterwards, hugging everybody. So you can never be too disappointed with a PB, but it just shows it like speed kills, man. You need speed in sport, but particularly on the track. Did you see this 5,000 or not? I'm not sure if you would have. The women's 5,000.
I watched all of it. I watch all of the races, so just whether I can remember it or not, that's
you remember discussion. This. Agnes and Gedich went with the pacemakers, and they were like a lap. It was like a whole straight ahead of everybody, and then it was terrible viewing. But then she just fell off the pace. The worst thing was she fell off the pace at like a kilometer or two in. So not only was she so far ahead, she was also then not on pace for a world record. So we're like, all right, she's just out for a jog now. She wasn't jogging, but she still won by 7 seconds. So it was just it was terrible viewing, man. But
it wasn't a great race. No, a good performance from her winning, but it's not a great race.
Yeah, I think she's going to struggle in the fight, come world champs, because there's so many other runners who are quicker than her. But there was a women's mile steeple. This is a new event that may or may not end up being put in. It's carnage with respect to where the barriers are.
Yeah, even the commentators didn't know. The commentators were saying, this is where they'll enter, because of this. And then they didn't. They entered sooner by the 200-meter mark. And the commentators say, that shouldn't happen, because if you have more people at the World Championships on the start line, there's going to be so much congestion. We need to give them that feedback. And I was like, it's so interesting to see this being trialed live.
Well, part of it's the commentators probably not doing their homework properly, which is to say there has to be a certain number of barriers across a race, right? So it's, in the hurdles, it's 10 hurdles. So if it's over 110 meters, then or 100 meters, then they are spaced appropriately. And if it's over 400 meters, they're spaced appropriately as well. It's always 10 hurdles. I can't remember how many are in the steeple. It's talking about people who haven't done their homework. But they have to go over the barriers a certain number of times. So they were thinking there'd be a longer run before the first barrier, but they can't do that in a mile. They don't have the time. Or the distance. So so they have to get over it, right? So I like to see this. Why I like to see this is because I like to see these events, and I've voiced this on the podcast before, where it's a little bit different to normal. And I'd like to see this earlier in the season, right? So that gives them something to race. It's a bit different. And then as we get towards the championship season, then they race the conventional events. So we talked about the 300-meter hurdles that happened at the Oslo Diamond League. I love that, right? Something different. I'd love to see those more of those events where it's just a little bit off, right? 700s or 600s or 500s or 300s, races where it's like these guys can come run it and it's still helpful to them. It's still a race. There's all sorts of things, but it throws the tactics. It's a little bit less, I know what's coming here and I know the race tactics. So it throws some chaos into it. So I do like to see it. And then there was the mixed 4x1, and I love relays, man. I love relays. And the Dutch are great at relays. So I was watching them. And it was just awesome. It goes man, woman, man, woman. And if you watch this back, I would urge people to go watch this back. You'll learn a lot about relays. Firstly, changes are key. But secondly, you have a zone where you can change. And what you want to do is maximize the time of your fastest runners running with the baton. So everyone thinks it's 4 people running 100 meters, but it isn't. Your first runner can run as little as 90 meters.
I saw the Dutch using this to their advantage. And I think it was the second or third changeover there. Was it the last one? That was where their fastest runner did most of the distance.
So it goes man, woman, man, woman. So the first change and the third change were at the end of the zone. So the man ran further and the woman had a short start to go. So they had to run less distance. Really smart. Really, really smart. And they're really well executed, because to do that properly means you have to have your changes perfect. And what that means is the speed of the person coming in and when you start has to be perfect as well. And that's really hard to do if you're not used to that pace, which the women are not going to be used to the men coming at them that quickly.
I mean, if you meet any Dutchie, they will often tell you they're smarter than everyone else. So this is a case study to prove that.
Echt. Yeah.
Do you want to give us some quick picks for Tokyo World Champs based on us following the season and what we've seen lately? A couple of quick picks and names to look out for.
Yeah, so I reckon Melissa Jefferson-Wooden, we talked about. I reckon she's the out-and-out favourite to win the women's 100. Kishane Thompson, I'm picking in the men's. In the women's 200, I'm picking not Gabby Thomas. I reckon Gabby Thomas is in the wrong space mentally, and I reckon she's not going to do well in the women's 200. So let's.
Why do you think she's in the wrong space mentally? I see she's been putting out statements with regards to coaches who have doped, who should not be allowed to coach athletes.
That's part of it. Also, her start isn't great, and I don't think it's getting better. And she hasn't been running that fast. She ran Grand Slam. She's been in a bit of like stuff with Grand Slam. So I'm worried for her. I'm a Gabby fan. I think she's great, but like I just don't know if she'll win like she did in Tokyo. Okay, I don't know who's going to win it because Julian Alfred's not running, or she's not running. Like she's quasi a little bit injured, so there's that. I don't think Melissa Jefferson-Wooden's going to run, and Sha'Carri Richardson's not. She's not in great form. I don't even think she's going. So I don't know who's going to beat her, but I'm not convinced she's going to win. Is the point? I'm picking Emmanuel Wanyonyi in the men's 800. I'm picking the short price favorite Keely Hodgkinson in the women's 15. In the men's 1500, I'm just going to give you three people to watch that we probably haven't heard that much about. Right, Azadine Habs from France. Niels Leros from the Netherlands, although you've heard a bit if you listen to this podcast, and then Nader from Portugal. These are three guys that I reckon probably flying under the radar a bit because they're not the big names, not the Americans or whatever, but they're pretty impressive. Like I reckon they're pretty good, pretty handy. And then I've just said the women's 5,000, the pacing. I just can't wait to see this. It's going to be chaos. I don't know what they're going to do, but there's just enough women in this that there'll be chaos here, partially because it could be that they really tactical, and then there's a burn off at the end. Something's going to happen, and it's going to be chaos. Is my pick for this women's 5,000.
When is this happening? This is in September. I think it's a few weeks out. Eh?
Yeah, it's like 3 weeks away.
Okay. Okay, and then we have to talk about UTMB. You are there. You're recording from there. It'd be silly for us not to talk about it. What, apart from you being disgusted by influencers, what else is happening at the race?
I talked a bit about the Nike stuff and the Vibram stuff already, and then Hoka lighting a money bonfire here and just keeping the whole village warm with it. We previously worked for a company. That company exhibited here, probably I think it was 2021. So I was in the trail salon. What do they call it? The Village to Trail. It is like double the size now. It is wild how big it is, man. There's all sorts of stuff going on. It's crazy. And it's just crazy to see how big this stuff has gotten in the last few years. There's just shakeout runs everywhere. It's wild, man. Like this thing is really like I can tell you trail running's taking off, but you get here and see it. I was here 2 years ago and it's gotten bigger again. So it's just every year it gets crazier and bigger, and it's crazy.
No, but that's good. Crazy is good for the sports. I know you'll have the purists saying it's about getting out into nature and losing yourself, and there's no one else around. And now, it's just becoming, the trails are probably becoming more populated. But I mean, when you have something great, that's what happens. Who should we be looking out for on the racing scene?
Well, we're not a trail running podcast, and we may not have fans, so I think we'll have casual fans at best. So if you are a real fan, I'll shout out Free Trail Podcast, Dylan Bowman's work. It's unbelievable what they've done there. They've done some really good previews and reviews and stuff. So go check those out for real in-depth analysis. I listen to that, and it's good. So some of the stuff they talked about that I think is interesting is that they've talked about how well dispersed the quality of men based on UTMB index. It's this index they give you. You run races, they rate you out of 1,000, whatever. The higher your index, the better you are. Based on that, looking across the different races. And the three main races this week are the OCC, the CCC, and the UTMB. They're the World Championships, right? There's a race currently going on at time of recording called the TDS, but it's kind of different. Anyway, so these three big races, the talent is spread fairly evenly, but actually dispersed a lot closer to the OCC, which is a short race, often not seen as that popular. It's the newest one. So it's quite interesting to see that. And that's probably because the World Trail Championships are coming in a month's time, I think it is. And they can be up to 80 Ks, the long course. So I think a lot of people are doubling, although some countries, and this will impact how the depth as well, won't let you race both. So France won't let you race both. Australia won't let you race both. So they don't want you to race an ultra in preparation for representing them at World Championships, which is under World Athletics, I might add. It's a World Athletics sanctioned event. So it's really interesting to see there. Some other stuff, there are some, and we talked a bit about this, some Kenyans running the OCC, the short event. Now, this is an ultra distance, so everyone's talking about, like, will they be able to do it, nutrition. I just saw UTMB put out a notice that there's inclement weather coming, so they're going to talk about what gear you have to carry. It might be the wet weather gear, and there may be a course diversion. So all of this plays into it. We talked about Jan Frodeno, who's not running, by the way. But Jan is, we talked about his challenges that might occur if it's wet, and these runners are no different. So I'm not as convinced. Part of the reason that East African athletes are so good is their ability to dissipate heat, which is really helpful in the heat and really not helpful when it's cold. We talked about this with Lisa Waitman, right? So I'm interested to see this. I'm going to try and catch up with their coach while I'm here and hoping to try and get him on the podcast. So watch for that, because I'm really interested in, Kenyan trail runners and how we find them and develop them. And also the OCC, I mentioned a little while ago, because at the time of recording, Jim Walmsley was on the UTMB list. He's actually dropped down to the OCC distance. So that'll be crazy to see him race that distance. He's crazy fast. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a course record, even with bad weather, potentially from Jim. So let's see how that goes. Some things to note. If you're watching UTMB, it doesn't start until Courmayeur, which is 70 kilometers into the race. It is 170 kilometers. It's not worth noting who's winning anything or worrying about anything until after Courmayeur. Courmayeur is brutal. It's like one of the saddest places in the world. When you're there at the aid station, they come through at like anywhere from midnight to like 3 a.m. And they go out into the cold. The longest time till they see more crew. It's cold, it's dark. They got to go over Grand Col Ferret. So like a ton happens basically between Courmayeur and Champay-Lac in the morning. It's the first aid station in the morning. And until Champay-Lac, you don't know if anybody's okay. Everyone could be dropping out. And it's got a huge attrition rate at Courmayeur. The last climb up to Flégère is common to all the races, and that is crucial and a key moment in most of the races. So keep an eye on that. I don't want to say too much here, but I think we're going to see the evolution of pacing a little bit. For a lot of the time, people have been racing each other and just trying to not let somebody get away from them. And I think we're going to start to see people pacing a little bit better this year. We talked about Ruth Croft's pacing last year in this race, where she ran the fastest back, I think 60 or 70 kilometers of all, that's ever been run. And I could easily see us seeing something like that again, maybe even faster and maybe better pacing. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more pacing and less like trying to keep up with everybody racing in the beginning. Because like historically it's been a burn off in the front, especially the men's race. It's just like everyone's running sub 4 minute kilometers, going ham, over threshold for some of them. Like shouldn't be doing that before, that race. So it's interesting. The free trail team, it was Tim Tollefson and Dylan Bowman, thought that she was a bit too conservative last year, Ruth Croft. I'd argue, she was making up time on Katie Scheid at the end, and they were like, she would have made up more time or she'd have potentially done better. I'm not convinced she would have, but like moving well at the end is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So let's see. Let's see what happens. But those are some things to look out for. The coverage will start. That'll go out. This podcast will go out, the morning before that starts. So this podcast will go out at 9 a.m. on that morning, and that race will start at 5 p.m. So a handful of hours later.
Interesting picks. We're going to remember them and we're going to revisit them and see how close you were to them. We chatted a while ago about the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift and talked about the discussion of weight. We used our network and asked some questions to some of them because we wanted other thoughts and opinions, particularly of those women in cycling. So you'll hear a much longer, broader part as we chat to Clara Koppenburg shortly. But we did ask a couple of other women, and this is what we asked them. We asked, do you think this conversation around weight is a bad thing for women cycling? And do you think we'd be having a similar one if we saw something similar from a major name in the men's peloton? Also, we asked, do you think screening to prevent negative consequences of underfueling / red S is something that should be implemented pre-race, as is similar in climbing as a sport? And one of the people we asked was Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio, who's from South Africa and has been top 10 in the world for the last 10, 12 years or so. So one of the most recognized names in women's cycling. This is how she answered those questions.
I do find the conversation around weight, especially with regards to women's cycling, is really bad and quite frustrating. The reason I feel quite annoyed by it is that the same would never happen in men's cycling. if a male cyclist had to be super lean to race the Tour de France, they would be praised for being professional and for looking good and for being on form. Of course, sometimes we talk about male cyclists looking incredibly lean or incredibly thin and borderline anorexic, but that's almost praised as a sign of their form and professionalism. However, when it comes to women's cycling, this is attacked as unhealthy, a bad example, and gets way more negative press than it does in men's cycling. Of course, I acknowledge that we are role models and we are the people that young children and aspiring athletes are looking up to. But the reality is that, we are taking part in professional sport, professional cycling, where it's very real that a power to weight ratio does make a massive difference, especially in the climbing races. And the reality is that professional sport is not healthy. I don't, it's not that I'm saying everybody needs to be super lean to perform, but especially in women's cycling, there really is an issue around the minimum bike weight rule, which is very outdated and hugely impacts lighter riders. So it definitely benefits the heavier riders. So in women's cycling, what we're starting to find, or what we have found until now, until this year's Tour de France FAM, is that riders in the range of 56 to 60 kilograms and over are usually the riders that have been dominating. And I believe that this has been, more than just a talent and power issue, or not issue, but game. It's been a lot also related to the minimum bike weight rule, because in this range of 56 and heavier, the minimum bike weight rule of 6.8 kilograms impacts the rider's performance in terms of power to weight and, the relativity, the complete package of the bike weight and the rider weight. It affects them way less. Whereas once you stop dropping below 56, it starts exponentially affecting the performance of a rider. So I've recently done a calculation and written an article where a 60 kilogram rider doing the Col du Madeleine on a 6.8 kilogram bike will hold a speed of 14.8 kilometers per hour, whereas a 52 kilogram rider holding the exact same power to weight, so I used 5.5 as the power to weight ratio, will hold only 4.3 kilometers per hour, and this leads to a 1 minute and 16 second disadvantage over the entire climb. So irrespective of the fact that the two riders have the same amount of talent and potential, the lighter rider will climb slower than the heavier rider because of the combined weight of the rider and bike, and the fact that the bike weight is disproportionate with the smaller rider. So unfortunately, what this means is it really does force smaller riders to go more extreme on their body weight, which can appear to be unhealthy. Now, we can just see this as a marginal gain and something that has to be done in order to perform. But where it starts to become unhealthy is when the riders don't see the fact that it needs to be something that is only done for a short period of time. So when it becomes unhealthy is that, and this is unfortunately the trend of female riders, is that we don't seem to be as comfortable with fluctuating our weights. So what happens is you lose the weight, you have a good performance, and then the female rider tends to want to maintain that weight, and that's what leads to eating disorders and problems and health issues into the future, because the longer you stay at that weight, the more likely you're going to have hormonal problems, develop RS. So that, I think, is the defining point, really, is that in women's cycling we tend to lack that sort of sense of, professionalism or the ability to be comfortable with fluctuating weight. And that's where I see the big problem. I don't necessarily see the big problem in being super lean and dropping weight low to perform, but I see the problem in then becoming quite obsessive about that weight, and which then leads to longer term health issues. It's a difficult one. I unfortunately do believe that it is necessary to have rather low weights, especially as the smaller riders in women's cycling. So it's something we can't move away from. But I do believe there needs to be more education and support with female riders, which we are starting to see now. More teams have nutritionists, more teams, are really supporting the riders, and they need to be supported to, if they're going to do something like that they need to be supported to be clear that it's only for a period of time and not for an extended period of time. So I hope that all makes sense. In terms of screening to prevent, underfueling and red S, yes, I do believe that that's necessary. I don't believe it's something that should be implemented pre-race. I think it's something that should just be implemented at strategic periods of time during the season. I mean, already in World Tour teams, we are seeing more and more, screening in terms of routine blood tests, which of course would be another means of screening for ADS, because it shows up quite quickly, obviously, in your blood results, and especially with regards to hormones and I suppose cortisol. So I do believe there needs to be regular screening, there needs to be support, there needs to be education. To the most part, this is happening in World Tour teams. So if we use the case of Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, I'm certain that everything she did, and she's even said this in interviews, it was supported and it was facilitated by the team. So she was working with the team nutritionist to achieve these goals. So I do believe there needs to be more support in terms of nutritionists and screening, but I don't see it as something that needs to happen pre-race. However, what I do see needs to happen is that the minimum bike weight rule needs to start being challenged, because if this could be adjusted in terms of your smaller bike riders, I think there would be less pressure to have to look at being super aggressive with losing body weight.
That was from Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio, and your response after listening to that, David, was, wow, classic Ash, like nails it as always, so thoughtful, has run the maths, very prepared, like really good input from her.
Yeah, I mean, listen, she's done environmental engineering or chemical engineering degree. So she's, very switched on, very smart, very thoughtful person in general. So it didn't surprise me at all that she sent that through. Really cool, like interesting opinions. And, again, we have our opinions, they have their opinions. Obviously, everyone's entitled to an opinion. Some people are more, some people want to hear more from other people, and we wanted to get, women's voices heard in this. So we didn't want to be two blokes on the podcast talking about women's bodies. So trying to have, informed opinions on our part and then ask questions and be respectful on that as well.
The next person we heard from was Hannah Walker. She's been a guest previously on this podcast, and if you're watching the Volta a España in certain regions, you will hear her right now as the main commentator on that. She's also a former professional cyclist herself. This is what she had to say.
I think it's a really interesting topic, discussion. Would we still be having this same conversation if a top male pro had won the Tour de France? And when you look over the years, it's always been, particularly in the focusing on the male side of the sport now, you have to be as light as possible, as lean as possible. If you wanted to be the best and you wanted to win, it was always very much you have to be as light as possible. You cannot overeat, you can't take on too much food, for example. Now, when you take a look over the duration of their careers, they've probably got some long-lasting effects of under-eating, racing and training with an energy deficit, which has had some long and big impacts on former professionals' lives, which are long-lasting. And it was really interesting, actually, because back in 2019, 2020, there was a study carried out by a professor, Asker Jukendrup, and he's connected to the Hogeschool in Arnhem-Nijmegen in the Netherlands. And he wanted to know what the body composition of the riders of Jumbo-Visma were by doing a DEXA scan. And that actually revealed the first signs of decreased bone density. And back then they had 70 World Tour riders and also talents that were put under the scan, as well as 30 ex-professional riders. And it actually revealed that the current professionals, 55% of them had a decreased bone density, and the under 20 category, it was 40%. So the big factors were, and the two main factors were the nutrition. So the energy intake was far too low. And secondly, the sports the riders did before cycling, which was a big factor. Perhaps on the male side of the sport, maybe riders will start to speak out about their experiences, and whether it comes from perhaps the previous generation, because I do think now there is a big focus within teams, and particularly at the highest level of, in some of the best teams in the world, there's such a huge focus on nutrition. I think the problem is for Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, for example, she's been, I don't want to say, it's almost like she's been the main target because of, she's come into Paris-Roubaix Femmes, she's won that race, she had a big target to win the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, she achieved that goal, but in doing so, she's gone away, and in her own words, she's worked with the team in a good way with the nutritionist to be able to lose the weight necessary to be the best climber, to be capable of winning the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, and she achieved that goal. I think the one thing that she's made very clear is she's done it in a safe environment, in a well researched environment, where she's done it in a safe way by losing that weight. And she's worked with the team at Visma Lease Bike to make sure that she still has the correct nutrition, she can lose the weight in a safe way. And even saying after the race, look, this is not how I'm going to continue for the next months. It's very much about looking towards that goal. And one thing that she has said is being a professional athlete is not healthy, but also because, of course, many have said, well, how does this look for young girls or even young boys looking up to a big athlete? It's also coming down to parents who have to educate their children and say, look, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot is racing at the top level of the sport. She's doing it in a safe manner. This is what it requires for her to win the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. But know that this isn't how lean she will continue to be for the next months, because, of course, that's then not sustainable. I do think there can be something done in terms of all teams, in terms of scans, making sure that they're looking after the riders, checking on riders regularly, making sure that they aren't losing significant amount of weight in an unhealthy way. I do think it's a huge shame that basically the whole talking point around her incredible victory at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift has been around the weight loss and the weight topic. But I do think, and she spoke openly before the race and after the race, that it was done in a healthy way. But I do hope this could be perhaps a catalyst for teams, women's teams and men's teams, to really take this seriously and make sure that any riders who are suffering with and going through a really difficult time with this, that they can have the support and help from teams that they need, and also make sure that they can do these DEXA scans, for example, or they can try and help these athletes.
There we go, Hannah Walker. David, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to get these opinions, like super helpful, appreciative of their time. And she's at the Volta of España and sent us those voice notes. So really appreciate her taking the time to do that. Just valuable voices to hear. Really appreciative. Thank you to both of them.
Right, let's not bury the lead anymore. This is a really important conversation, and I was very excited to have, because I think some people need to hear it. I think it moves the needle. I think it helps so many people. So again, shout out and kudos to Clara for being so vulnerable, open, transparent, and willing to put herself out there to help others. So without further ado, listen to Clara Koppenburg. Clara Koppenburg is a professional road cyclist known for her versatility and climbing strength. Since turning pro in 2015 with the Bigla Pro Cycling team, she has built a robust career across teams such as WNT Rotor, Rally Cycling, EF Education Cannondale, and most recently returning to the Cofidis women's team, I should say, in 2025. Clara is encouraged to start cycling by her father, who is a team doctor in cycling. She's got a sports science degree from Konstanz University, which she completed in 2018. She blends intellect, athleticism, and commitment to her craft. What truly sets Clara apart is her courageous openness about her personal challenges. We're here to talk about this today. In a recent, deeply personal revelation, she shared her journey through an eating disorder, the loss of her menstrual cycle for 6 years, and her path to recovery. She declared, "I won myself back," emphasizing that reclaiming her health was her greatest victory, even without big race wins. She is an excellent cook, I must tell you, and has a great idea for a cookbook, which she promised me she would complete. So we're going to find out about how far that is today. She was also the only person on the last stage of the Tour de France farm who had crazy people on the mountain screaming happy birthday at her. Clara, welcome to 1% Better.
Thank you so much for having me.
Right. So I want to give listeners some context first. We're going to talk about a very serious subject today, but we might laugh here and there because you and I have known each other for a very long time. I've known you since you were about 18 years old, and we have that kind of relationship where we can go from serious to very funny to silly in a very quick time. So listeners must please not feel it's insensitive if that happens. Clara and I have had a working relationship, personal relationship for a very long time, friends for a very long time. So you're no stranger here. But I was very encouraged by this very difficult post that you put out where you were openly talking about your eating disorder that you had. And at the time of recording, I should say, it had 23,000 likes on Instagram. Did you expect that response?
Honestly, not at all. Like I was, at that time when I wrote the post, I was really, it felt right, but I was always also a little bit insecure if I should really write it because, like you said, it's really like a sensitive topic. But I was just like, I hide it or like I didn't talk about it for so long. And at that moment, it just felt right. But you were actually the first person I sent the post just to like kind of double check if that's okay. Because like you said, I know you since a long time. And I don't want that any words get out like wrong or something. But then to get all the nice messages, I really got so many comments and not only on Instagram, but also on WhatsApp, and people texted, even wrote me emails. That was absolutely insane. And I'm completely overwhelmed with all the responses. But it also makes me at the same time a little sad because also a lot of girls texted me that they're facing similar situations or they had some stuff in the past. And I was also like a little bit like, it's not sad, but shocked that a post like this gets so many views and like response and everything, and all my nice pictures where I smile, where I have pictures with my dogs and stuff, nobody seems to really care about. But then when I post something like this, everyone is like putting so much attention about it. I think I shouldn't take it in a bad way, because it just sees that people want to learn more about it and really want to also kind of spread the message that we have to talk about it, that we should not hide that topic anymore, because I think hiding is the worst you can do with this.
Yeah, I also think it speaks to the authenticity behind it. And I think authenticity is very rare on social media, particularly in a professional athlete context, right? We tend to, and maybe this is more the male professional athletes than the females. I think the females probably do a better job of being more authentic and more vulnerable, whereas there's a bit of a bravado in the men's like professional athlete world where you can't show weakness and those sort of things. And so I think that's part of it, is people rewarding that, because generally, especially Instagram is kind of a highlight reel of people's lives versus, the behind the scenes that they're experiencing. So I think people appreciate that and would appreciate you being here. So thank you. I can share that we haven't got a personal relationship. I've never met you, although I did yell happy birthday to you on the mountain. But it's wonderful to have you. And I think it's an important topic to have, I guess, what's it like for you now being on the other side of things? Like, how is your experience day to day now versus say when you're in the depths of struggling with your disordered eating?
I mean, in general, I can say I have a lot more energy. I'm definitely more happy. Also, I feel absolutely less stressed when I look back, like 4 or 5 years ago. There was constantly this stress in my head, like, how should I do things that maybe people don't see that I don't eat or something? It was constantly thinking about food. What can I eat next? Or like, also, like, it was a lot about really pushing my body to the limits with a lot of training, and even go like, when it was raining, those extra 10K by bike to the massage. I could have taken the car, but no, I wanted to take the bike. All these kind of things, I think it's like it doubles everything up. And it was just constantly, I remember I was just constantly stressed about everything. And all this is gone. I have different stress now because I'm stressed about my future, of course, or stressed about other things, but it's definitely not as bad as before. And also stuff like, I think I completely avoided eating with people, with my family, with friends. I just always, tried to be a little bit more for myself. I didn't really carry that to the outside. I think whenever people saw me in the team, I was still really, really friendly, really happy and stuff, but there was a lot going on in my head. And all this is gone, and I feel a lot more free. And I'm also trying to be not as perfection as more like, I think before I was always trying to do everything completely right, and had my rules for, like, my personal rules. Nobody made any rules for me, but I had them, and I always wanted to eat all the time at the same time. I wanted everything had to be really clear, and now I'm just like a little bit more flexible, which I think is in the daily life really helpful for not only for me but also for the people around me. And in general, I'm really happy I'm out of it, even if not everything is completely gone yet. Like, I think there is still a lot of doubt about myself, and I still have to connect new with my body. I have to face a lot of new things with my body, and I'm still like in the level where I just have to figure out everything, I would say.
What is that like?
To figure out stuff, or
Yeah, like I know you mentioned about post recovery. It's not like, and David had said this offline as well. It's not like I'm over this now, I'm done, tra la la, off I go. Like, what does post recovery look like? You say you struggle with your body now still. What can you give us more detail?
I mean, in general, when I look back, now when I see the pictures, I'm really scared about myself, how deep down I was in a hole, which at that point I didn't see. I was aware of how I looked, and I was aware of my situation, but I was not scared because I got a lot of good feedback on the bike. Let's be honest. I was just flying up the mountains, and whenever I stepped on the bike, I could completely push myself so hard, and I got amazing numbers and everything. So I was not really scared about myself because I knew I have so much energy on the bike. So how can I be weak in the daily life? There's no risk of myself to collapse at one point because I had so much power on the bike. So that was always the reason why I was never scared about myself. But now looking at the pictures, oh wow, I'm really scared. And now I also understand why my parents and my family were so scared about me. And now when I'm talking about the situation right now, I would say like there's no risk at all that I would fall back in a eating disorder or anything, because I truly appreciate how my life is right now. And I'm really happy that I made this step. But like, recovery can be really messy, honestly. Like, I didn't have my period for 6 years. And when I got it back, I was happy because like there's no bigger thing in my life than creating my own family later on. I'm dreaming about my kids. I have a list of names, how my kids will be named.
So
at
German,
that point,
so organized.
So at that point, of course, I was really happy to get my period, but at the same time, I was crying like hell because I did not know what's going on in my body. I felt like I'm 14-year-olds again, like have to do all this puberty again. And it felt awful, honestly. And still, like, now I get my period completely regularly, and I think it's a really good sign, because I still know that a lot of athletes don't have their period, and I'm happy I have it. But every time I get it, I'm like, oh no, again, because honestly, like, it's not a nice feeling. And I think also other pro cyclings talked about it, like Demi, when she had her period, also Kim LeCourt during the tour. You're a little bit more tired, you contain a little water, you just feel a little bloated, everything comes together. But I think it's just normal. And if everyone in the peloton has it like every 4 weeks, it also equalizes again. But at that moment, I was just like, oh no, now I have my period. I have to think about so many more things. And that's not the only thing. Also now sometimes I really struggle to look at myself on pictures, because when I look at the pictures, I don't really see myself yet, I would say, because I still have another vision of my body in my head, I would say, how a professional athlete should look like. I'm not talking then about a normal person. I talk more about how a professional athlete in my head should look like. And at the moment, I don't really see myself like this. And this is something that sometimes frustrates me. And I feel off in the races because I can immediately compare myself, my look, to other athletes. And then I'm already at the start line and thinking, how should I ever compete with them? They look more fit, they look more sharp. And I think that's like a side effect of recovery. I mean, I'm really not a specialist in it. Of course, I wrote a lot about it. And I also wrote a paper, like my bachelor degree, about it, but I don't know the medical side of it. And I don't know why the body decided to suddenly gain weight and keeps gaining weight, even if my nutrition is going really well. I follow nutrition plans. I'm not supposed to gain weight because I also train a lot, but my body just keeps gaining weight. And then of course I'm just like questioning what is going on, And I just would like to understand a little bit more what's going on, what is the medical side of it, to also maybe don't be too stressed about it, because I just would like to hear, yeah, Clara, it's just like the body has to like find the level back again, and in like, I don't know, 6 months or whatever, I don't know the time, everything will also feel a little bit more normal, back to normal again. And also like when you get your period, it's not as painful anymore or whatever. So I just would like to understand a little bit more the background of recovery, because I can just talk about it, how it feels, but I don't know actually what is going on.
I think I'm not sure there is. And when I say I'm not sure, I really don't know. It's not an area I've done a lot with medically myself, but I'm not sure we have answers to that stuff. I don't think we've seen a good enough recognition of it historically to then start tracking people going forward to understand what timelines look like. And then in that context, I would also say for a lot of people, it's the end of a career, not mid-career or something like that for you. So I don't know if we can, and in that context of, it's the end of your career, then everything changes anyway. Right. So then weight gain and these sort of things, nutrition, like how stringent you are on nutrition changes. But you mentioned there, I wanted to ask a question. You mentioned you're on the start line, you can see other people, they look different. You have this vision in your head of what professional athlete looks like. How are you finding competing now? Like that must be really difficult to go, like to roll up to a start line and go like, I don't feel like I can compete at all. And how did you choose to start recovery, or what made you start recovery if that's the case? Because classically people hit rock bottom for some reason and then they have to, right? They're forced to do this, but it sounds more active to me. I'm sorry, I don't know your story as well as Xylon does, but it sounds like it was a choice from you, and that's not an easy choice. If you said, this is how an athlete looks, I'm still an athlete, I don't look that way, and they do, but I'm also going to recover, that's really hard.
Yeah. For me, it was a really long process, I would say, because for many years I was really successful with that kind of body weight. And this makes it even harder, because if you are successful with something, to change it and you actually know it's going to change, or I mean, I didn't really know what is the outcome of changing, but if you just look by watts per kilogram, there is a difference. But I just realized I can't live that life for so long. It's too exhausting. It's too stressful. It's too many lies. I'm too alone. I am separating from my family. They're constantly scared about my health, and I just realized it's not possible anymore. Also, whenever I crashed, I broke my hip twice, which is not normal, I think. because it was big crashes, but not as big that I would break it twice in 2 years. Stuff like this just made me really think. And like I said before, like my biggest dream is to create my own family. And I know like how it would not have been possible. And now I know I can have kids again. And that's just like, I think the biggest achievement I can have. And then I also like, I always thought about what was the moment where I actually really decided and fully committed, because it was for a long time, I would say for 2 years, that I was kind of committed and I really tried, but never enough. So I was maybe gaining 1 or 2 kilograms in a year, which is just, at that point, it was not enough to make a big change. It was better than nothing, but it was not enough. And I think the biggest change was actually, my dad had a really bad accident, and while I was with him in hospital, he took my hand and just said, "Clara, please eat, please keep eating." And I just knew, okay, if I kind of fuck it up now, then we are both like in a bad situation. And I know that my family, and especially my dad, needed all the energy and all the power. And for me, that was the biggest switch I could do, I think. And because I just knew it can't be me anymore who gets like the attention of the family, kind of. And nobody should be scared about me. We have to put all the focus into my dad's recovery now. And that was for me the biggest changing moment of my life, I think. And from there on, I can just see like the timeline from there on, it just increased my weight. And so as bad as it was with my dad, it was at the same time, it healed me a little bit. So I think that was the changing point. And then coming back to your question about what does it do in my mind, why I still compete, I really truly believe that I wasn't just a good cyclist because of being underweight and flying up the climbs. Because also before, when I had normal weight, I was young, but I was doing quite well, I would say. And I know that I can get back there. I really know that it's just a matter of time until my body finds the right balance again. And then I will be even stronger than before, because I also like learned a lot about myself, about training. I'm a lot better descender now, which I'm really happy about it. So I just waiting for the moment where I can also climb really well again, because then now with my descending skills, I'm going to be unstoppable then.
And how are you finding navigating the performance environment? Because I'm sure it's a tough line to walk with, coaches and nutrition staff, given, your current context. And as you say, you're gaining some weight, you may not be climbing as well as you want to. That must be a very difficult situation in a team for anybody.
Yeah, I think so. Well, last year I had a team coach and a team nutritionist, and I was from the first moment already, like in the first training camp, December or something, I talked really open about it, that my goal is to gain some weight and to be in general a stronger rider, and just like not be like connected with this ED thing anymore, because I really wanted to step away from it. And it was a really big change, because suddenly I had to eat in the training, I had to eat in the races and stuff. That was for me almost new. I mean, most of my trainings before I did without food, or just like a little bite or something. And
are we talking like 5 hour, 6 hour rides with very little food?
Yes, very, very little food, yes. And this is a big change, I would say. But I also realized that's the new cycling word now. Let's be honest, like when I started cycling 10 years ago, it was not such a big topic in cycling, the nutrition part. It was a lot about also like the old way of training sometimes. Let's do like 5-6 hour rides, low endurance, but also low nutrition and stuff. And that's just a little bit also how I grow up. So for me, it was really difficult to put a bigger focus on nutrition, especially with the background I had. But then in the end, the team, it didn't really work out for me with the team. So I went back to Cofidis, and there we have a team nutritionist, but I have my personal coach. And I remember when I introduced myself to the new coach, he's actually working for Movistar as well. One of his first questions was, Clara, I have a real deep question. Do you get your period? I was like, and I was really happy because normally the last 6 years, I always said, no. And this time I could say, yes, I get my, and then he was like, good, then we can work together. And I found that really, really nice because for him, it's really important that the girls he's coaching, they are healthy and happy. And so I immediately felt like, okay, he's aware of what can happen to a body and he's informed about it. So I felt really safe with him, and I can talk really open with him about it. And then we just tried to get that extra weight into power, because honestly, yes, I gained weight, but not all of it is muscles. Because I also increased a lot of body weight, because I remember when I was so low in weight, my body fat was 4.8, and that's for a woman is really percent. That's really low, and sometimes they didn't.
That's low for a man.
I know, but I know it's low, but I thought it's normal for an athlete man. I know it was low for a woman, but I thought that's how a professional athlete should be. And
I must be honest, I didn't know what to say to you during that time. I remember looking at race results. It was the Tour of Valencia, and you won, and you beat Ashleigh, Moolman-Pasio, who's a friend of ours, a very good cyclist. And I was like, yes, Clara. And then after seeing the results, I went and looked at the race footage and photos, and I saw you, and that was the first time I saw how you looked. And I was very torn between, she's winning, I'm so happy for her. But then I could also see, I'm not so sure. And you don't know what to say to the person in that situation, because that's why I'm so happy you're here and talking about this.
Mm-hmm. I have a little bit the same feeling. During that time, I had some really amazing results, I would say. And I was really happy about it. And I could feel that people are happy for me, but nobody was honestly really happy for me, because I think everyone was just thinking, she's only getting these results because she's so skinny, and nobody wanted to see me that skinny on the podium. I mean, honestly, I even got from teams sometimes that they said, no, we don't want you to race anymore, because that's not how we want people to look in our team. So at one point, I was in a big conflict, because it almost went into kind of body shaming. That's how it felt to me. I didn't see that they only tried to protect me. For me, it just felt, oh my God, they just told me in my face, I look horrible. And that's why they don't allow me to race. So I did not really understand what they tried, and that they tried to help me. And now I can see, because if I would be in the position now that I see such a skinny girl winning races, I would not truly be happy, because it's the wrong image I think we send to the public, to all the young girls or young athletes. And I think I actually experienced that. Also, I remember post interviews after winning a race, and the first question was yeah, but you're really skinny and stuff. And that was never I didn't want to talk about my weight. I wanted to talk about what an amazing race I just did, but people couldn't really see that. And I think that was also a point why I decided, it's not the way how I want to win races. I want to win races because I'm a strong rider, not just by being underweight, and then I want to really enjoy my results and celebrate with family and friends who are truly happy for me. And that did not really happen in the past, I think.
It's, on some level, I'm really shocked to hear this, because I'm surprised that cycling teams are that proactive with this. I'm very surprised they would stop you racing when you're winning. That's really interesting to me. I think it's a positive sign for cycling in general. I really do think it's positive. It would have been tough. And, having these conversations, Xylon just mentioned it, how do you reach out to somebody, do you want to feed this? Because part of, you've alluded to already, is you were winning, and that perpetuates it. Once you start doing something, regardless of what it is, if you start winning with that, it's very hard to stop doing that.
Yeah.
I
So
actually wanted to ask your opinion on team environment, and I don't want you to mention any team names, but I think we can openly. I think you don't mind me saying you are looking for a team next year, and
Yeah.
obviously you're not performing at the level you were when your body fat percentage was 4 point something percent. But and I spoke to you in the middle of the Tour de France of Egg Zwift now, and you were so scared of the mountains because you were suffering every day, but you were still halfway through the field. You weren't towards the back of the field. But I think teams look at that and they look at the Clara Koppenburg who was winning and where she is now. So then maybe we'll look at the next rider, you know. But I told you, I was standing on the mountain and I was looking at the amount of riders who were still suffering behind you, would
Oh, yeah.
still love to have your legs. And I think teams need that context. But without naming names, like, what do you think teams can do better to support people in your situation? And I also understand from the team's point of view, it is high performance. They have sponsor obligations. It is
Yeah.
year-to-year contracts with their sponsors. So I get it from both sides. But do you feel there's something teams can do to support athletes better?
Yeah, I honestly think that because, I think a lot of teams are really good now in preparing riders and talk about nutrition from the first training camp on and how important it is. And I was amazed, or like how the teams force the riders to really eat 100 grams of carbs at least per hour, even in training. That was for me so new. So they're really behind all of this, but it's more like precautious. I think nobody talks about, like, especially like the girls who maybe had an eating disorder or coming back or still are in recovery, because I know a lot of girls who had like amazing results and are amazing riders, but they are facing exactly the same situation like I do at the moment. And like I said, like the recovery just takes a little bit of time, but it should not destroy our dream and our future, I think, because we are actually so much stronger than a lot of girls because we committed to this path. And even if we had better results before, but I think this commitment shows also for the life how, like, if we are once committed to something, we really stick to it, no matter what goes left or right or what goes wrong or how bad it sometimes feels. And I think we should take this commitment into a really positive, like, strength and characteristic. And I think the teams should see, like, how hard we are trying and how we must. I think sometimes I have the feeling we have to fight even double than others. And if we can sustain that and if we can get out of it, I think we are really great riders. And yeah, from my perspective, I just would love that the teams give us that kind of space, that they say, Clara, we see, like, or whatever name, it's not only about me, but we see you were an amazing rider and you had your problems, but we also can see that you're constantly always coming back. No matter what happened to you, you're always fighting your way back, and we believe in you, and let's try to do that step together. We can start from scratch. We explain you actually what you have to eat, or because I'm still like not 100% sure when I have to eat what kind of nutrition stuff. And I would just love to have someone who takes my hand and tells me it's going to be okay. We go this way together, because I'm a person. I really I can believe in people's opinions and stuff. And if someone tells me we do it this way and it's going to work, then I will completely stick to it. And yeah, I think if there would be in the teams maybe a little bit more experience about how to treat these kind of riders, or also more knowledge about what's going on in their bodies and how maybe they need a little bit of different nutrition or training or whatever. I honestly, I don't know myself. But I think if there's a little bit more awareness and also openness from teams to get these riders back into the peloton on the top level, I think that would be great, because it would show like a good, like, what is the word? It would show the people that just like that it's possible to come back, and also for younger athletes, because I think it's the worst if young athletes see if riders make this change and then they're getting kicked out of every team and they have to actually stop their career, because that will stop them from doing the right step. And this is why I actually still keep cycling, not because of this, because I love cycling, it like from the bottom of my heart, But I also I still believe in myself, and I want to come back on the top level to show it is possible and that they should not give up, even if it was really difficult for 1 or 2 years. And I got like kind of kicked around in teams. I want to show all these girls that it's still the right way, even if it's hard for 1 or 2 years. And I think that's what I meant with teams have to give us the space to actually get through all of these changes, but then help us to get back to the level, because I think otherwise it's not going to change a lot in the people's or in the athlete's head.
Yeah, if nobody can successfully role model what recovery looks like and return to performance, then there are only a handful of options for people looking at you. Is to say, I keep going the way I was going, right? Skinny is faster, and I don't want to not be skinny because then I'm not coming back, right? That's really the story that's told implicitly, not by anybody's fault, not the goal, but that's kind of the message we're sending. Do you think cycling, so I don't know how much you know about competitive rock climbing, but they have restrictions on BMI and weight and these sort of things and screening pre-events. Do you think there's a role for something like this in cycling, or do you think that makes things worse because the discussion becomes around being too small and too skinny, or not missing those barriers and those sort of things?
I think that topic is not completely new. I think it was already like discussed if there should be a minimum BMI or something in cycling. I also remember when I was that low in body weight, actually one of my former teammates was really pushing for that minimum BMI because she was too scared about me. And at that point I was fully against it, obviously, because it would have stopped me from racing. And that was where I felt the strongest, where I felt the most myself at that moment. So I was, of course, fully against it. I was like, that's the most stupid idea. But now now, I would say maybe the minimum BMI is not a cure enough to stop someone from cycling or not, because in the end, athletes have it's not only about the weight, but I think there should be some or enough health screenings at the beginning or middle of the season. And if, for example, if the bone density is too low, or also some hormonal stuff or whatever, I think then there should be reasons for teams to maybe not end the contract of the rider, but maybe just pause it for a while and give the rider the space to recover well, without giving the rider the fear of being out of the team. Because I think whenever you have the pressure to perform or to get a new contract or to get results or something, then it's really difficult to fully commit to something. And I think this is the kind of space riders would probably need.
And adding stress adds to the problem. It doesn't fix the problem, right? So part of the issue is a stress problem. Some of it being nutritional, some of it being training, some of it being psychological. So it's not, adding that stress isn't part of it. And I think it's a difficult situation because you're trying to balance privacy of information, right? Your health information is your health information. I shouldn't know about it. But if you don't get to race because of your bone density, then I need to find that out because I'm the public, and that will happen. Yeah. So then your private information isn't private anymore. And that's, we've got to balance that. We've got to balance incentives, because if I say your BMI has to be 25, promise you girls will be at 25 exactly, right? It becomes a goal, and that's also a problem. And, if we have to screen you, there's also an incentive. As I said, I'm very reassured that teams are telling people they can't ride because they're too skinny, but there's an incentive the other way to hide that information because it's the best rider. Can you imagine if insert best rider from whatever team that's a GC contender has a slightly off measure? Now all of a sudden, well, we don't get to race the Tour de France this year. I can see teams sweeping that under the rug, not because they have bad intentions, but because it's a performance environment. Yeah, it's a messy situation. So,
it would send a very important message on the other side of the coin. But teams, for their survival, I agree with you. That's exactly what they would do.
You and I have talked about this in a different context that I won't explain, Xylon, but in these situations, the easiest decision is to stop somebody riding who's not very good. The hardest decision is to stop your best rider.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing easier than cutting somebody who you don't like or who's not performing, or that is an easy decision. Oh, you're too skinny. cut, right? That is an easy decision. The hard one is when it's your best rider and they're someone who you love and who's really important for the team and is a bit too skinny. That's the difficult bit, right? Probably you, when you were at your, skinniest and winning races, Clara, like for them to tell you to stop cycling would have been very difficult, right? Because you were...
It would have been, yes. But now, there was in 2019, I just won my first race, the Valencia stage race. And I just kept going and I was really performing really well. And then the team manager decided to stop me and said, we really want you to have that amount of weight and then you can race again. And at that point I was so sad. I was really, really shocked about that message because I was at that moment their best rider. And I felt like I'm on my absolutely highest. I just won my first bike race. That was so great. And then they just stopped me. It felt so not fair to me. And I was really mad at them. But now looking back, I'm so grateful that they did it. And then I was able to get back to that weight they wanted. It was just a number. It had nothing to do. They just wanted to see me to commit to it and gain some weight. And I did. I was able to race again. And that was the first step, I think, into the right direction. It got bad again. It was a roller coaster, let's be honest. But I think it was now it's been 6 years ago, it was the right message. And I'm really grateful for this. And I think now also, whenever you enter into a new team or in the beginning of the season, they actually do these health checks, which I think is really important. Or at least in the teams I've been, you have to do the DEXA scan for the bone density. You have to make the fat measurements, all these kind of things. And because I haven't been in the situation anymore where something was in red numbers or something, I don't know how they would behave if something would be in the red. But I know that teams are aware of all of this and they actually do pre-cautious all these tests and stuff. Like I said, I don't know how they react if their best rider is in kind of a red or something. So
yeah, well, it takes a strong person to respond the right way. But I guess if those people are listening, it can make a difference, right? It made a difference for you. It was part of it. So, that's it's amazing to hear that. So I'm sorry you had to go through all that though. It's we talked a little bit before this. We talked about body dysmorphia, and it's interesting that you spoke about it's not something you ever really experienced as much as a view of or somebody else planting idea of what an athlete looked like, as opposed to I think I'm too big. It was this is the size an athlete is.
Yeah, I never felt too big, never ever. I knew exactly how I look. I was completely aware of it. But like I said before, it didn't scare me. I was just in my mind, it was the right look for an athlete. Because when I look now at the pictures, you could see every single vein. But then if you compare, I remember there were a lot of posts from the men's before the tour of legs, where you could see all the veins. And the comments were wow, the guys are ready for the tour. Everyone was more positive about it. They were wow, they are so in shape, But then I had the same legs and nobody said that to me. I was a little sad about it because I was in shape too, kind of. And so I just got that image in my head that athletes have to look like this. But also at that time, we didn't have these kind of, I think, role models so big in my head, like Anna van der Breggen or Demi, who are really on the highest level, or Lotte Kopecky, who climb so well and are so strong riders, which with a completely normal body weight. I think it's really, really good. We have these kind of riders now in the peloton. And I think that should change our view of how an athlete should look like or not, because in the end, it's not how an athlete look like. It's really about how we ride, how we race, and how strong we are. I think we can do a lot with power over the weight. It's not all about being as skinny as you can, because then you also have other weaknesses. You're probably getting completely shuffled back in the echelons or something. All these kind of things. So I think the bike race is so complex, and yes, I probably won't win a top mountain finish anymore, but I will be a lot better rider in different situations in the bike race. I'm much stronger in the wind. I'm better in the descents, all these kind of things. Maybe I have to switch my mind from being a pure climber and being as skinny as possible, but think more about there are a lot of, like now I would be actually able to win a lot of more races than before. Before I could only win a race when I was finishing on top of the climb. Now, like when I get all my body working properly again and stuff, I can win all kind of races pretty much. Maybe not a bunch sprint, but otherwise, I think that's also like a really nice message we can send out. That especially in cycling, you have so many like opportunities to win races, not only on top of the mountain.
I also think it's short-sighted from teams where someone like you has to go bang down doors to find a contract after all the experience you've had, 10 years, the roller coaster you've had. You've been through university now, and the experience you have in terms of racing, but also the experience you have in terms of trying to compete at the highest level while going through something very, very difficult. I think that experience is just invaluable, and you could help young riders so much. So I appreciate you putting out that post. I really, really commend you for it. I appreciate you coming on here. I know you're going on other podcasts as well. So well done for doing that. But before we let you go, Clara, I need a cookbook update. People might be interested to know that you are a very good cook and you were playing chef the last time we spent time together at Rocacorba cycling in Banyoles, and you had a very good idea for a professional peloton cookbook. Where are we with that?
A couple of months I was fully into it. I really, after every training, I wrote down so many recipes. So I contacted so many girls from the peloton, always by Instagram, because I don't have all their phone numbers, right? I texted them, hey, I have a great idea. You want to be part of my cookbook? And so the idea was actually to just like get a lot of recipes from all the riders and with their personal story behind the recipe. So for example, I got Elisa Longoborghini's favorite recipe for her grandma's gnocchi. And I think now I'm still collecting a lot of recipes. I have about, let's say 50 or something now, but I'm still collecting and then properly write everything properly together and design it nicely. But whoever is listening, please keep sending me the recipes, because it got a little, I have to say, it got a little quiet.
And if any publishers are listening, we're sitting on a genius idea here. So reach out to us.
Yes.
Cool. But thank you. I think we'll leave it there. David or Clara, if you guys have nothing else to add, we'll leave it here then. Thank you.
Just thank you. Appreciate
thank
you being
too
so...
Thanks for the platform. I think it's still like, I'm also looking forward to all the next podcasts, because I think it's such an important topic. And I feel I was scared to talk about it, but as more I do, I feel really, really proud of it. And I feel like I can really talk openly about it, also about how I feel in the body, or I know from other athletes how they feel. And actually everyone feels exactly the same if you're in recovery. And it feels so good to talk open about it, because there's just so much like weight going off my shoulders. And I have the feeling I'm not alone, and maybe people understand a little bit more what's going on and will be more aware for the future. And I hope if in the end, if I just help one or two athletes or girls or whatever, I'm already more than happy. And I just hope that nobody has to go through something like this, because life is a lot better without having an eating disorder. And I want to spread that message as much as I can and encourage everyone to try to get back to a healthy and happy life.
Very well said, Koppenburg. Very well said. I love it.
But
you do know that none of the other podcasts are going to be as good as this one, right? You know that, right?
Of course not. No. That's why you're the first one.
Thank you, Clara.
Thank you too.
My friend Clara Koppenburg, what a chat, man. What a story. So courageous. I am really happy that she is where she is in her life now and in such a good place, and really happy for her. How did you find that conversation?
It was good. I mean, I liked her honesty, liked her openness, was very appreciative of her time, obviously. And it's an important conversation. You never want to hear people having gone through that, but she does sound like she's come out in a good space. And I don't know what else to say. I'm really appreciative.
I know she's looking for a contract for next year. She's still got a point to prove. And her final chapter of the story is showing that you can be healthy again and you can perform. That's what she's after. So I'm really hoping that a team spots that, gives her that opportunity, finds value in that, and she finds a way out of that and performs at the highest level. As again, I would love nothing more for her but that. Thank you again, Clara. I wanted to ask you, what are we watching this weekend? Are you watching anything? You will be home. You'll be back in London, probably watching the live stream of UTMB.
Yeah, because of flight costs, our sponsorship isn't quite enough on this podcast. I will thank people quickly for both suggestions and their support of the podcast, because it allowed us to take some reflection. I got my little mic here. You can see it, little podcast mic. So that's helped us on the road, because we had a comment about our audio once. So we are listening. We do appreciate all the feedback and comments. And also the support helps us, because the sponsorship money is what pays for these podcast mics. So thank you. The podcast money isn't enough to fly me backwards and forwards yet, and as a result, I couldn't deal with the price of those flights to fly after Friday. So I'm flying on Friday, which will mean I fly during the CCC, but before, and I'll be home before UTMB and probably before CCC finishes. So that's great, really, exciting, and watching those. What about you, mate? What are you watching?
That was such a cool story. Thanks for sharing, man.
Again, I was being authentic, mate. You should try it.
What am I watching? I'll be watching the Volta a España this weekend. Football, Premier League is back. I think the Formula One is back this weekend. Diamond League would have happened already before the weekend, so not that.
Are United winning yet or not?
What's that?
Are United winning yet or not?
Man, this connection is really bad. I can't hear you. I'm going through a tunnel. I don't know. Internet. Oh, so bad, man. Should we get out of here?
That was a joke. I was like, I'm so used to your internet being terrible. I was like, I'm also asking. I wasn't asking because I knew the answer either. I was legitimately asking because I'm like, are they meant to be winning yet? Because you were so positive about the season. You're like, oh, they're going to win.
That has changed. That is all changed. Now, 2 games in, I'm not positive. The manager needs to be fired. I've made a 180 degree. That's why they call it a fanatic. That's why they call us fans.
Mate, I picked this. I said to you last year, remember this? We've had so many of these conversations about Erik ten Hag, and then, oh no, we need this Amarin, and I was like, anyway, I won't labour the point. I'm a United fan. I just don't really follow football that closely, so it is sad to hear. But let us get out of here. We do thank everybody for tuning in. Again, please share the podcast with people that you think need to hear this or would enjoy it. We do appreciate you rating the podcast, so please do that as well. And if you haven't subscribed, we are on all of your podcast players, and we're on YouTube, so feel free to watch us there. We also do video on Spotify, but please do go watch, subscribe, and all those things on those channels. We appreciate you all. I will catch you next week, Xylon.
Thank you very much. We'll catch you on the next one.